welcome to this episode of The Language Lady. I'm your host, Dr. Hemphill, and today I have some exciting news for you for your struggling writers. Have you had a struggling writer in your classroom say things like, I'm not sure how to start this sentence, or I've written this, but I'm not sure how to finish it. I know what I want to say, but I can't find the right words. Well, this perfect strategy of using sentence frames is a great tool to use with any students, not just ELLs, but any students that struggle with writing. Because oftentimes students have not had enough experience with writing different types of genres or using different styles of writing. And so they struggle when they have been faced with a task to write or answer a certain prompt. So sentence frames is literally almost like you could imagine a skeleton. You're providing the framework, you're providing the skeleton for the students, and then they can add their voice into it. There are some cons to this strategy is that some people may say that it's restrictive and it doesn't allow for creativity, and that's where you and your student can kind of think about ways you can alter the sentence frame. But let's look at some examples. And these examples will help meet the needs of all your language levels in your classroom.
So here is an example of a graphic organizer that utilizes sentence frames. If we look in the first box, it says poisonous, and then there's a line for words, so the student can draw a picture or list something that they perceive to be poisonous. In the second box, it says meaning, an adjective that describes something that's full of blank. Poison can cause blank or even death. So the student, although they have not written the entire meaning by themselves, they are still filling in the blanks with things that they understand to fit the description of being poisonous. And then on the last line it says, what is something that is poisonous you should stay away from? I should stay away from blank because it is blank. So we have provided that frame of a sentence starter, but then they fill in the blanks with words that they have utilized, and they can use word banks to come up with other words. So if you have not seen my video on word banks, I'm going to post a link so that you can click on that if you have not seen it. An important facet of increasing oral language for ELLs and academic language is providing them opportunities to talk with their partners. However, at times ELLs and even other students that are native language speakers may not have the verbiage or the way to start the sentence. So here are various examples in different contexts of how they can utilize accountable talk in different subject areas. The next set of sentence frames are specifically for English language learners, and if you're going to notice that they're numbered 1 through 4, because number 1 is going to be for your non-English speakers, the ones who have just arrived. 2 are going to be for students who've had a little bit more experience with the language. 3 are intermediates, and 4 are going to be more advanced. So every single time that you see these different types of sentence frames, know that that's what those numbers indicate. So you can use this for all your English language learners. For the skill set of making predictions, here are perfect sentence frames that students can utilize when making predictions. One of the things with different types of genres, when it's like a recipe or steps that you have to follow, ELLs are not always clued in on transition words and what those transition words mean, so those have to be taught explicitly. So here is a chart that teaches ELLs the types of sequence words that can be used when writing something that involves sequence, and also it helps them to understand that when they're reading a passage to look for those signal words. Comparing contrasting is also another key strategy that students need to understand in writing, and so here are different levels for using compare and contrast. Students will also be faced with passages that they'll have to ask themselves, what does it mean, and ask themselves questions to monitor their work, and then clarifying. So here are perfect sentence stems or sentence frames that students can use when they're answering a question that is asking them to monitor and clarifying their thinking. Summarizing is one of the most important strategies and skills that students need in order to become, really showing that they comprehend what they're reading and what they're understanding. So again, it's not always easy. So usually students will start by saying the story was about and then they get stuck. So here is perfect frames in order to encourage them to think of different and more complex ways of summarizing a text. There really is a movement now in America where we're asking students to really work in groups and working collaboratively, because that's what employers are really looking for. How are students able to work collaboratively? So here are some great ways of encouraging students to think collaboratively, expound upon what their classmates are talking about, and then finally coming up with their own ideas from that type of collaboration. And then from collaboration as a group, they can come up with a group consensus and judgment on what should be done next. Based on Common Core standards, author's viewpoint and cause and effect is something that will be seen over and over again in different texts, classifying, categorizing, and knowledge. Questions that ask about knowledge, and exposing these students to these different types of questions will help them to be more prepared as they go up on grade level, and also when they are being exposed to higher level tests. And then here are some wonderful reading journal topics, and if you assign this as homework, the student will have ownership in how they want to answer or how they want to show what they learned that particular night. So here's an actual game that I've had my students play, and it's called What Would You Choose? And the students are faced with these different cards that they have to answer. For example, would you choose to live where it's always raining or where it's always sunny? And then the student is faced with this sentence frame where they have to say, I would choose to blank because blank. It's a great way to getting students to practice speaking in complete sentences, expose them to vocabulary, and it gives them different ways of answering a question because they're using this particular language frame. And as a teacher, you can be creative and change it up and use a different frame. So here is a reminder of the different levels of higher level questioning that we want to keep in mind, that even if our students, for example, an ELL is at a level 1, we want to always be thinking about the next level, not just in their language proficiency level, but also the type of questions that we're asking our students.
Sentence frames are a great strategy because it produces confidence in students. Oftentimes, they know what they want to say, but they just can't find the way to start their sentence or put their thoughts into words. So sentence frames gives them that power to express themselves and to be able to meet answer the questions that are expected of them. And what's nice is that although you have provided that frame for them, in the future they'll be able to go back to those because they have you have given them a backpack of different ways to answer a question. So it's really nice when you see them utilizing it in other situations and applying it. Next week, we'll take the step further from sentence frames to actual paragraph frames. Because we know we have students who really struggle with forming paragraphs and finding the right verbiage. So stay tuned next week to learn how you can adapt and apply paragraph frames in your classroom. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.